Hello everyone, welcome! I have a really fun set of cards that I'm excited to show you today. There's a new collection out from Simon Hurley and Spellbinders. It's a collaboration between the two of them. And I had a blast playing with this collection. It was just a joy. So these are the products that I'm going to be using. It's not all the products included in this release, but let me show you what I have. So first I have the Joyful Christmas Sentiments Glimmer Hot Foil Plate and Die. So you get a bunch of sentiments with one foiling and then you cut them out all in one pass. And they say, Happy Holidays, Deck the Halls, Merry Christmas, Joy to the World, and Season's Greetings. And that piece is the die. So it's a very clever little set of Christmas sentiments. I hope they do more like this. Next I have the Candy Stripes Cover Plate Die. Comes with the outline that you can cut out the whole piece and then the actual candy stripe plate. And you can use this for Christmas, of course, but I'm going to be using this all year round. And next up is a very large stamp set. This first one is called Winter Wonderland, and I just fell in love with all of these cute little critters and the large sentiments, and there's some small sentiments and little presents. I have the awesome coordinating dies, but you can purchase this stamp set with or without the dies. The next set is called Halftone Holiday, and this is such a clever set because you don't need to do any shading on these if you don't want to. They're so beautiful when they're stamped out. And then, of course, I have the dies to it. The die from the Joyful Christmas Sentiment Glimmer Hot Foil and Die cuts out the sentiments from this stamp set as well. So I love that. Let me show you here. I'll fit some of them over the top. There you have Merry Christmas. So that was fun. These all kind of coordinate together. What I have next is not new on the market, but it's new to me. These are the Simon Hurley inks. I have 6 of these. I've seen Simon Hurley play with these and they just look gorgeous. And so these have been on my wish list for a while. So I was so excited to get these. I have Bee Sting here. I also have Gur, Prom Queen, Overzealous, Rosy Cheeks, and Clear Skies. They also sent me some Lunar Paste, and I'm so excited to give this a try. I got Clear Skies, Bee Sting, and Slippery When Wet. But after having played with these, I think I need to get them all. They are so awesome. So let's open up the Slippery When Wet. This is a beautiful golden color. I've also watched Simon Hurley do so many beautiful techniques using these lunar pastes, so I was really excited to give these a try. So let me open this up and let's take a peek at what it looks like. And it's such a gorgeous color. So I'm definitely going to be using all 3 of these lunar pastes in today's video. I also got the paste tool set, and this is going to come in handy. Let me open this up and show you what it includes. So it has a plastic palette knife, and then 2 of these scrapers. I don't know if that's what they're called, but you can just kind of smear the paste on your paper with these, or over your stencils. And last, I got the stamping foam. I've been wanting to try this for a long time too. This includes 4 pieces. Let me open this up and show you what it looks like out of the bag. I have the circles here and they come in different shapes, but you can use the negative as well as the positive piece to these. So here's the little circle, it just pops right out. So you can use both of them at once, or you can use the circle or the negative space around it. So let's get crafting. I'm going to start out by doing some glimmer hot foiling using the Joyful Christmas Sentiments and some beautiful glimmer hot foil. I'll do this in red first, and then I'm also going to do it with some gold. I'm going to cut down a little bit of foil to cover this plate, and I'm making it kind of wide so I can cut off the left-hand side. When I peeled off the seal, I kind of ripped the foil, so I want to get rid of that edge. I have my Glimmer hot foil plate system heating up. And now that the green light has stopped blinking, it means that it's ready to go. I'll use some Spellbinders Glimmer specialty paper for this. And then I put the pretty side of the foil to the pretty side of the Glimmer plate. And then I'll just tape that in place so it doesn't shift. Then I can place this upside down on the Glimmer machine, put the plates on top, and I'll press the timer button. Once that is done flashing, it means it's ready to go. I'll skip ahead here so we don't have to wait the full minute. Let me pull this out. I'm going to take it off camera and run it very slowly through my die cutting machine. And now for the reveal. Let me remove these plates. And then I have the magnet tool so I can pull this off the Glimmer machine without burning myself. I'll peel off the Glimmer plate and the foil. And these glimmered up beautifully. I just have a little bit of overfoiling at the bottom. That's all right. I'm going to use the coordinating die just to see if it doesn't get rid of some of that. And here they all are ready to go. I love that I have several at a time that I can use. So let me show you a close-up of one of these. Isn't that beautiful? And here they are in gold. And they're so fast and easy to glimmer up, and then you have them ready to go for all of your cards. So let's get started with card number 1. I'm going to use the Slippery When Wet Lunar Paste. This is a piece of 110-pound white cardstock. And I'll put a bunch of the paste at the top of this card panel. I'll use the other tool just to kind of smear it over this panel. And it's the consistency of mayonnaise, I'd say. I'm trying to do this kind of gingerly because it's very easy to scrape all of it off of the paper. But I want an even consistency across this. You could also use your blending tool or a blending foam if you'd like. But I just wanted to try out these tools. The edges don't need to be perfect because they're going to be covered up. So I'm just going to put that aside to dry and clean up my tools as well as my silicone mat right away. Just makes it easier while it's still wet. And they clean up just perfectly. I'm using baby wipes to do this, as well as some tissues. But let's put the lid on this little tub of paste. And then I can just wipe off the silicone mat. Very easy to do. And it doesn't stain my mat at all. It doesn't take very long for this to dry. So while that's drying, I'm going to work on the candy stripes. I'm going to cut it out with some fern cardstock as well as some rainforest cardstock from Spellbinders. And I'm going to be using both of these panels on top of the gold. So let me take these off camera and cut them out. And they're just easy to punch out the strips of paper inside. I ran it through my machine twice, just so it was sure to cut out cleanly. You could do some really fun inlay with this die. Put lots of different colors of stripes inside. I think that would look super cute. But let me pull out all of these strips of paper, and these could be used for a technique as well. Just a few more to pop out. Let me show you what this panel looks like. It's so cute. And it's going to look beautiful over the gold panel. Okay, so here's the light green and the dark green. I'm going to flip one of them over so that I can make a plaid. So the light green is going to go over the gold, and then I'll put the dark green on top. This will give kind of an inner glowing effect to this panel once I'm done. This, of course, is the first time I'm playing with it. I put a decent amount of glue on my green striped panel, the light green, But the dark green, I just went around the perimeter, and I regret doing that because they do kind of pop up. I was being kind of lazy and I paid for that, but it still looks pretty. Here's a close-up look at that. To go on top of this panel, I'm going to stamp out some of the halftone holiday stamps. So Ranger did send me the 6 ink pads that I showed you already, but I went ahead and purchased a few more on my own, just because I knew I was going to love these ink pads. This extra ink pad that I purchased is called Later Gator. I just love how he names his inks. I'm going to use the Holly Berry stamp, as well as some of the loose leaves that come in the set. And I start out by stamping them with the Overzealous. And this ink pad was super juicy, and it kind of oversaturated the stamp. So I do end up stamping this a second time on a new piece of paper with the Later Gator, and it just stamps out beautifully, and I end up using that second stamping. On the edges of my first stamping, however, I do use the Later Gator just to add a little bit of extra shading. Like I said, with these halftone stamps, they're drawn in such a way that they look like they're already shaded, so really no extra shading is necessary, unless you want to, of course. I'm going to stamp out the berries next using the bee sting. And then I'm going to cut out all of these images with the coordinating dies. And I like to put at least 2 pieces of tape on them so they don't shift when I run them through my die cutting machine. And here they are, all ready to go. The little berries I'm going to attach to the center of my largest image. I decided to pop up my image with some foam pieces, and then I wanted it to look a little more full, so I'll use the extra leaves and just glue them down flat behind my large image. And this just helps to take up more room on the card and just look fuller and prettier. The berries I'm going to glue down flat on top. You could put gems or pearls or whatever you'd like, of course, but I just wanted to use the cute little berries. And then I'll pop up the sentiment with some foam as well. And this I'll attach at the top of the card. I was going to attach it closer to the holly, but it just looked better to me up at the top. I really love this gold foiled Merry Christmas. It just really matches well with the gold background. I'll use some liquid glue to attach this to a top folding white card base. All of my card bases are 110-pound cardstock. I like the heavyweight cardstock for my bases. And then I'm using some fashion gold pearls around the leaves and the berries. And then here is a close-up look. The gold background just takes it over the top. I love how this one turned out. The slippery when wet Lunar Paste just makes the card glow. It's so gorgeous. For card number 2, I'm going to take another stamp from this halftone holiday set and stamp out this poinsettia. I used the bee sting ink for this. Let me show you a close-up look at how gorgeous this is. You can really make up some fast Christmas cards with this set. So let's stamp this out one more time. And then I'll cut this out using the coordinating die. But before I do, I'm going to stamp out more leaves, as you see there, as well as one of the pine cones. And I'm going to stamp out the pine cone one more time as well, just to make it a little darker. Isn't that pretty? Here's a close-up look at this panel. So I'll go ahead and cut out all of these, and it does leave a white border around all of these images. And now that my images are ready to go, I'm going to work on the background panel. So I have another piece of 110-pound cardstock here, And I'm using some Clear Skies ink. I just want a little touch of color behind my poinsettia. I already cut out the candy stripe die with some red cardstock. And this time I'm going to use a foam brush or a foam tool just to add on a little bit of gold. This is very subtle, but when it hits the light just so, you can see this beautiful gilt detailing on it. And I'm not covering the whole panel with this, just little sections here and there. Mostly just around the flower that I'm going to put on this. I'm using a baby wipe to wipe off the Lunar Paste. That way it won't get crusty on me. That's just very easy to clean. So now I'm putting glue on every single stripe, and then I'll put it on top of my white and blue panel. And this fits an A2 sized card edge to edge. It's just perfect for an A2 size. However, I did see Simon Hurley make a slimline card with this die. It was so pretty. Okay, so let's glue down all of our elements. Again, I'm going to pop them up with some foam. Here's a close-up look at that panel. And I'm just putting foam in the middle so that I can tuck leaves and pine boughs behind it. I went ahead and gilt the center of this flower, but I end up covering them up with some gems. I'm going to speed this up for the sake of time. This got to be kind of a long video. Let's just tuck a bunch of leaves and a pine bough or two and a pine cone behind my poinsettia. I'll use a Glimmer sentiment at the top of this card, and I decide to use the gold one, and I'll pop this up with some foam strips. So this will just go up in the top right corner. And then I'm going to put a lot of gold gems on the center of the flower. This is a really pretty touch too. I think I add about 8 of these tiny gems. I'll attach this panel to another top folding white card base using some liquid glue. And here it is all done. These are going to be some really fun cards to mail out this Christmas. I've been making Christmas cards since July, so at this point I have more than enough to send out into the mail to all of my family and friends. My next 3 cards are all going to be critter cards from this Winter Woodland stamp set. But I want to stop here and make some more panels for these. I have some of Ranger's grit paste, and this one is called Snowfall. I'm also going to use some Lunar Paste in the color Clear Skies. The first panel I have is Indigo, and the second one is Cosmos. Cosmo? Sorry, Cosmic Sky is what it's called. The stencil I'm using is called All the Stars, and this was released last year from Spellbinders. So on the dark indigo cardstock, I'm going to use the Lunar Paste, the Clear Skies Lunar Paste. I'll just smear this gently across the stencil. I'm trying to get the paste into each and every one of those little holes. And this was really fun to do. And it has just stunning results. But once I have all of the holes filled in with the Lunar Paste, I'm going to use the palette knife just to scrape off the excess and put it back in my bottle. Don't want to waste any of this. So let's put the lid on, and then I'm going to clean up the palette knife as well as the stencil. Let's pull off the stencil and I'll show you how stunning this turned out. So here it is. Let me show you a close-up of this. It just looks really pretty on this dark indigo cardstock. And now for the grit paste. This was really gritty. It went on the stencil perfectly, but it does turn out a lot less smooth than my first panel, but I'm still going to use it because I love how it turned out. But again, I'm just trying to get the grit paste into all of the little stars on this stencil. And then I can just kind of scrape off the excess and put it back into the jar. And now let's peel off the stencil very carefully. And here it is. The top right corner, I didn't get enough grit paste in, but that's all right. I'm going to be covering it up. Okay, so for card number 3, we're going to stamp out these adorable polar bears, the mama bear and the baby bear. I'm stamping them out with some Copic friendly ink. This is Extreme Black ink from My Favorite Things. And I stamped them out several times just to get a dark impression. I did go ahead and color them in off camera just for the sake of time. It's just some very simple Copic coloring. I just added a little bit of warm gray shading to the polar bears. And then I colored in 2 of the presents. So let me set these aside. And my Lunar Paste panel has dried. And let me give you a close-up look at that. It just looks so glowy and pretty. So this is the panel I'm going to use for the polar bears. I'm also going to be using a set that came out last year from Spellbinders. It's a very handy little set. It's called Color Block Scenic Scape. And I cut out a couple of hills, which I'm now going to add some clear skies onto, just to add a little bit of shading. This is going to be a landscape card. And I wanted to differentiate between these 2 white hills with some of this blue ink. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the 2 hills together. And then I can glue it to the panel. And it's going to overlap just a little bit. But I'll cut off the excess with my scissors. I'm going to stamp my sentiment right onto one of the snowy hills. The sentiment is going to say, "We come bearing gifts." And I love how bold this sentiment is because it really shows up well on this card. And I used VersaFine Onyx Black ink to stamp that out. The polar bears I'm going to pop up with some foam squares. Let's put the baby bear down next. And then on the mama bear's back, I'm going to glue the presents. So I'll glue the largest present first, and I put foam squares at the top of this where it goes off of her back, and then the smaller present on top of that. So just a cute little stack of presents. I'm using a Copic marker to add shading under the bears. And then I can glue this onto another white card base. It's about time for me to buy another container of glue. Mine is almost empty. And here's a close-up look at the finished card. I love how these little bears are drawn. They're so cute. And these you can use for winter cards as well. They don't have to be Christmas cards, of course. Moving on to card number 4, I'm using the Grit Paste panel. And I'm adding a little bit of Midnight Snack ink. This is another one that I purchased on my own, just because I thought it was such a gorgeous color. This one, I'm going to use the bird stamp. And again, I'm going to be coloring this in off camera with some Copic markers. And then once that is done, I'll cut it out with the coordinating die. This is a fabulous coordinating die because it cuts out some of the inner bits to that. I think that makes it look so special and upscale, but here it is all ready to go. So this is kind of a simple card. I'm going to stamp out the sentiment onto the bottom left corner using some Versamark ink. And then I'll emboss this with some white embossing powder. That's really going to pop off of this panel. So I'll pour on the white embossing powder and melt this. And then I did cut this panel down a little bit so that I could have a white border around it. There is ink on the other side of this panel. I was doing another project, but I didn't like how it was turning out, and I didn't want to waste this paper. I just used the other side. The bird I'm going to pop up with some foam pieces. And then for a finishing touch, I'm using a little bit of glossy accents just on the berries. This just makes it look really pretty. It goes on a little bit opaque, but it dries clear. You'll have to excuse my voice. I'm just getting over a cold, and this is the most I've been talking in about 3 days. That's kind of giving out, but we have one more card to do. But let me first show you a close-up look at card number 4. And then we're going to move on to my favorite card of this whole collection. But I really love that Seasons Tweetings sentiment. So adorable. Okay, for card number 5, I'm going to use this beautiful red, it's called Bee Sting Lunar Paste, on another piece of white cardstock. So I'm applying a little bit up at the top, and then I'll use the scraper tool to pull it down and just kind of cover this whole panel. And it doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to use the cover plate, the Candy Stripes cover plate again on this card. But this is really a fun paste to play with. Let me just pull out a little more of the paste for the bottom of this panel. And I'm just trying to get it as even as possible. So once I'm done, I'm going to allow this to dry. It dries really fast. But look how satiny and pretty this panel looks. It's not like a mirror red cardstock. It's definitely a satin finish to it. So gorgeous. With the Candy Stripes die, I cut out a piece of Dune cardstock as well as a piece of Timber cardstock, which is a really dark brown. And I'm going to create another plaid piece with this over the red Lunar Paste panel. So this time again, I'm trying to put as much glue as possible on this. I just don't want all of the stripes popping up like they did on my first card. And then I'll attach that to the Dune cardstock. Unfortunately, I lost a little bit of footage to this card. It stopped filming when I was stamping out this cute stag image. But I just colored him in with some Copic markers. I used more foam squares behind him as well as the foiled image. And here is a close-up look. I also used some poppy red pearls around my images. But this one's my favorite. I just love the colors, the browns and the reds on this card. Thanks for sticking with me throughout this long video today. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you were inspired. This was such a fun collaboration release between Simon Hurley and Spellbinders. And again, it's called Joyful Christmas. I'll have the links to all of the products listed in the description box. I'll link to the products that I didn't have from this release in the description box below as well. There were just a couple of beautiful glimmer plates. Take care, my crafty friends, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Bye!